Do you want your life to be more flexible? Do you wish you had a house on the beach? Do you want to travel more? Do you yearn for financial stability? Would you love to be your own boss? We all have a different dream life. It is literally so different for everyone. I help each person individually figure out what they really want. And then we work on your mindset and actions to start creating the life you've always wanted. So if you're interested, go to yoadriennetalks.com, click on coaching, and check out all my different coaching programs so that you can start having the life that you deserve. Good Monday morning, my peeps. It's Yo Adrienne Talks. And today I have an amazing guest, Shannon Norman, who started the movement, Accept the Compliment, and also is the author of Confident as a Peacock. And I am extremely excited to have her here for you guys because I think she's going to give you so much insight on compliments. So Shannon, welcome. Introduce yourself to my guests, please.
Thank you, Adrienne. I am very excited to be here and spread awareness on the movement Accept the Compliment, as well as my book, Confident as a Peacock, that was released earlier this year. So it all starts with awareness, and just by your listeners hearing this, then they are going to start paying more attention to how they are accepting compliments and be able to make some tweaks that are going to positively impact their everyday life.
So I'd love to know exactly the movement and how it came about for you. I think the listeners would love to hear that. So,
okay. So definitely, if the listeners are interested in this topic and they want to learn even more than what I'm going to share in this brief conversation, they can check out Confident as a Peacock, because I do share the why as well as the movement. And some other good, I call them a recipe. So 7 things to work on confidence. So I'm a faithful person. I also am not the most patient. So this has been a test, a true test over several years, Adrienne.
Well, thank you for being real, because I know a lot of us can relate to that. So
yeah, so it's like, when I say it now, I'm like, but it wasn't that easy. And when I hear that, like the story of Spanx, and I've listened to her speak so many times, and I'm like, yeah, you could easily listen to this and be like, oh my gosh, why isn't something that easy for me? And it's like, that's not the case. So if this sounds like it was really easy, it wasn't. It tested my patience. But the accept the compliment, like that just came to me after a conversation with a friend, and then during a conversation with my daughter. And like when you feel like you're really being pushed into doing something and you're excited about it, but then you want to know the why. So the accept the compliment, I'm like, yes, people need to accept more compliments. And I'm like, where did all this come from? I know it started in a conversation about that we women say, I'm sorry too often, and, a sorry jar and all of that. Yes. And so I just kept thinking about this, and I kept coming back to it. And I'm like, accept the compliment. And so then I was getting aggravated, because I'm like, I'm like a really authentic person. Like, what you see is what you get. If I say I'm going to do something, like I give you my word, and like I follow through. And I'm like, for me to talk about people needing to accept compliments, like I have got to understand the why. So I just kind of stopped. And then every day I'm like, okay, God, help me figure this out. And I would meditate, and I don't know how many months it was. It felt like forever, but I'm going to guess it was probably 3 months. And one morning I'm putting on my makeup, standing in the bathroom, and it just hits me out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I not know this? And so briefly, the what hit me was that me accepting compliments, me receiving compliments, had a huge impact on my life at a very young age. And I remember one time I was probably 7-ish years old, and I was standing in line at a grocery store, and my home life was a wreck. It was falling apart, and this nice older lady, stranger, had no idea of that. And she complimented me on my smile. And this is a compliment I have continuously gotten throughout my life about my smile. Like, oh, your smile lights up a room. Oh, you have a beautiful smile. But I remember her saying that to me, and the significance of why was because in that moment, she did not know that my father was abusive, that my mother had taken us several times in hiding from my father, and then he would find us, and then we would go back, and his abuse and narcissism and some deeper stories that are in my book, just briefly enough to understand like why is this important and the impact it has. So the impact, Adrienne, in that moment when this woman told me that I had this beautiful smile, it resonated with me. So I accepted that. I didn't respond. I remember looking at her thinking, I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to say. And so I'm like, okay, I just keep smiling. But how it set with me was maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I don't deserve what we go through. Like maybe there's hope. Maybe there's something more. And I'm like really, how long does it say? How long does it take to say those words? Like, oh, you have
and that
such a
just gave
beautiful
me
smile.
goosebumps because she changed, like you said, she didn't know. I mean, to her, she probably pays compliments. Like when she sees something, she just says it, right? And she loved your smile, but it changed like your day, your moment, and now your whole life by this one person. I mean, I seriously have goosebumps from that. I mean, that's incredible that in that moment, it meant so much to you, and she'll probably never know that, right? But like, it meant that much to you, and good for you for accepting it too, to like, let it sink in and be like, hey, I'm not, like you said, you're not broken. You don't deserve that. You deserve more. And you have a beautiful smile and you're helping someone else. You probably made her smile, right? With your smile.
Yes, all of that. And so it was in that moment as I was putting my makeup on, that was like, oh my gosh, I know the why. I know why this makes a difference. And I'm like, but that's so simple. Like, I'm like, no, yeah, it is simple, but how many people? So I really started paying attention. And I've done all kinds of fun things, from even going to Las Vegas and giving 100 compliments to see how strangers would take them. I've had a lot of fun with it. I've done a lot of reading about it, but I'm like, life is so complex and it's so challenging day in and day out. And we don't have control of so much that happens around us. But I'm like, this is something that we do have control of. Like so I'm like, okay, I'm one person, but one person can make a difference. So if I can help increase the awareness of like what a compliment really means and how important it is to accept it. And it goes so much deeper than all of that. But for our short podcast, just the thinking about how you accept those compliments rather than deflecting them, and then giving more compliments and paying attention to. And it's like, then that builds that momentum up, kind of like, when the person goes through a drive-through and they pay it forward by paying for the person behind them. And it starts this chain reaction that it's like, oh my gosh, if one person wouldn't have done that, then all of this happiness wouldn't have happened that day.
And it's so crazy because I was just telling you a story right before we got on this podcast. So I'm going to share, but like I was at volleyball, right? And I was hitting well. And a girl looks at me and says, oh my gosh, you're hitting so well tonight. And I was like, whatever. Like this really hits me because we don't take that. We don't know how to take a compliment. Like we feel like we should just be like, where I was like, oh, just getting lucky tonight. Or, you think those things instead of like, hey, thanks. You know what? That is awesome. So like, how did you start accepting the compliment? I'm so curious because I can tell, like, when I think of when people pay me a compliment, I probably do exactly what you're saying, deflect, right?
Yes. So I love that you're asking this question because it wasn't easy. Again, what I'm going to say, it's like, oh yeah, I can't do that. That's it. Like, no, like you can do it. And even as passionate as I have been on accepting the compliment, it was still a challenge. And so what I would do is I would catch myself deflecting it, like what you just said in your experience. And at first, I just increased my awareness. And I was like, oh, mental note, I deflected that. And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I like to compare this to like, growing up in the Midwest, tornado drills in elementary school.
Yes, yes, I can recall those.
Yeah, it's the muscle memory, right? They trained us on what to do if a tornado hit, because then our muscle in our brain would remember and we would then do it. So then I was like, okay, I'm deflecting. What am I going to do? And I would prepare. Like, I was like, okay, next time I get a compliment, even if I mess up, I'm gonna correct myself, and I'm gonna correct myself out loud. But I'm gonna work hard to pause and sit with it for a minute and then respond with whatever it was. So I just chose thank you, because I'm like, I think I can stick to that. I think I can remember that, under pressure.
Yes.
So when I was deflecting it, I would say, "Oh, and I would deflect with, oh no," and I'm like, "Oh, you know what? Thank you. Thank you. I started to deflect that compliment and you were giving me a gift. And thank you. That really means a lot to me." And then the practice of doing that now I continuously observe myself, and I'm sure that every now and then that, I deflect, but I work hard to catch it. But I am so much more comfortable in accepting it. And I love analogies. So here's an analogy that may help your listeners. So a compliment is like a gift. Like, imagine, the family or friend that during the holiday season wraps up the beautiful box and it's a beautiful bow, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty, I don't even want to open it. That's what the compliment is. It's a gift. And so if somebody is giving you that compliment, they're giving you that gift. When you deflect it, then you're tossing that beautiful package back to them. Instead, then you pause, you say thank you, you say whatever you're comfortable saying, and it's like visually thinking of, I'm opening this beautiful package, I'm seeing what's in it. It was so thoughtful, it was so personal, and you make eye contact and you say thank you. I really appreciate that. Like, then both the giver and the receiver are receiving that. And in all of my research, the same part of our brain that gets triggered and lights up when we receive money as when we get a gift.
Really? I didn't know that.
I'm like, all this is linking together, like, so we can have so much joy, and we control this, and we control how many compliments we give, and we control how we accept those compliments.
That is so interesting. I've never thought of it from that point of view. I love this conversation, because you don't think about the fact that, like, when I give a compliment, I want them to know that I feel that way, right? Like, you want them to know you have a beautiful smile, you're doing well, you want them to accept that. So I never thought about the fact that when you deflect, you're almost like throwing their gift in their face. That's such a great way to, I mean, that, I make things very exaggerative, but like, instead of just saying like, hey, thanks, like, because they want to give you that compliment. They're not just doing it. They're not just saying it to say it. They want you to know something. Isn't that interesting? I've never thought of it that way.
And now, Adrienne, you have that awareness. So your brain is going to tune into those things, and you're going to see over the next many days of how many compliments you're given and you deflect. You're going to be paying attention and seeing it with other people happening around you. It's kind of like, whenever you buy a new car and you're like, oh, I've never really seen this car on the road, and now everywhere I look, here's this car.
That's such a good analogy. Yes. And I love how you said to take a moment, because, in all sales, female entrepreneurs always hear like, you need to respond, not react, right? So our first knee-jerk reaction to anything that might be emotional or whatever is to react with the emotion with that. But the fact that you said to take a moment and respond, that's what they say to do when somebody's upset about business or whatever, that you need to take a moment and take the emotion out of it for a minute. So I love that you're saying, like, take that knee-jerk reaction of like, no compliment, no, don't do it, and take a moment and let it sink in, because somebody wants you to know something.
Yes, they do. They want you to know something, and so many people, like what you just said, you don't think about how your response impacts somebody else, and the difference that you can make, and how you really accept that rather than the normal deflection.
I mean, this is such a great movement. And so I'm curious as to how have you been getting it out? I mean, I know your book, but what else do you do to like get this out there? Like, I mean, because I love this. This is incredible.
Well, I love your energy around it. And so many times whenever I'm having the conversations, and I'll answer your question in a moment, then it's that same kind of energy, and people are like, oh man, yeah, like, and I think it's because it's like we control this, we can control this, we drive it. Wow, it's so simple and it makes such a difference. And so how I get my word out. So it turned into then it was like, I need to write a book, but I've got some other things to share too. And then it really came back to confidence, because how you accept compliments and give compliments, it does link back to your confidence. And so I'm like, confidence is really important in living a happy life. And so I kind of pulled it all together in my book. So my book, and it can be purchased on Amazon, next day delivery, sometimes same day delivery. And then I do talks. So I have talked to, it started out with just women and like women, ERG groups, networking groups, schools. It's been really fun as I've gotten further along in the journey. One group that I talked to it was 50% men, 50% women. And that was the first time that men were in my talk. And so that shifted it. And it was really a very different kind of a conversation, which was exciting and fun. And then I didn't really think about the impact that this could have on school age girls. Everybody's school age. However, the schools that I've talked to have been for groups of girls. And that was absolutely amazing to see that, like, these teenage girls and have those conversations and how vulnerable they were. And I'm like, wow, like as an older woman, to be able to connect with these kids and be able to give them, these nuggets and increase their awareness of how that can shape their life. So Shannon Norman, coaching at gmail.com is my email. People email me, people find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. So I go around and I do talks, and always open for ideas, because sometimes people will be like, oh, you should do this and you should do that. I hosted a women's event retreat October the 13th. For the first time, so a couple weeks ago, looking at if we're going to continue that next year, just to be able to also have a small segment there to be able to spread the word.
I love that you brought up the younger generation too. I had my daughter on a podcast a while back talking about confidence, because I do feel like so much of it when we're young is when these things are established, right? That we don't take the compliment, that we watch other people deflect, we watch them do that. So, we know our brains mentally do exactly what people around us do, because that's how, in the Stone Age times, in order to be accepted by your tribe, you had to act like your tribe, right? So that's still like ingrained in our head. And so we watch people do this, right? The whole time growing up. So we do the same thing. So how great of you to get to that age bracket and say, you can do things differently, right? Like you can pick this out and change that and accept it and understand it, and not deflect and do what you've seen everyone else do. Because I do think it's hard for, like you said, especially because I have a 14-year-old girl, to watch these girls lack that confidence when they have so much to offer, and they're already being like, they're already doing that. They're already kind of like stifling what they have, like all these amazing gifts they have. They're like, oh no, like she does it better, or people don't see that in me, or, whatever these things are, because they're deflecting these compliments, right? Like they hear it, but they don't, or what do they listen, but they don't hear it. Like it doesn't sink in, So when you're talking with them, are they able to start changing? Like, have you worked with them? Like, I would love to hear how I wonder if it happens faster or slower, or how it works for kids too, because I could see where my listeners are going to take this, but yeah, to implement that with your kids, how great.
Yeah, so many different thoughts on that, Adrienne. From clients that I have where I'm coaching them, and then one specific client where that joined a group. So I did a kind of a group coaching, kind of an experiment, and it was along the lines of and around accept the compliment. and her husband was giving her compliment after compliment. She deflected all the time. Her kids saw that. Her husband didn't know she was part of the group coaching, and he ended up a few weeks into it saying something to her about how he had noticed a difference. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And then her kids as well. So that's an excellent example of how we do model and we do build that momentum and like of what's okay. With the school age girls, I have where I've done talks, I haven't, continued on relationships with them. So I can't say, oh, this is where it's going. However, you're giving me ideas. But in the moment, I was so impressed with their vulnerability and sharing of, and so many of them would say, yeah, I don't give compliments because I'm worried it's not going to come out right. And I don't want somebody to make fun of me. I don't want somebody to think, oh, I'm weird or something like that. So I just don't say it. And then my son is 16 now, our youngest. And over the years, as I've been doing this, seeing the difference it makes for him and how comfortable he is, he's more comfortable in giving them to strangers. But he's shared different examples with me of where he's given them at school. And he's like, Mom, I wouldn't have done that if I didn't understand the impact that it can have. And so that's where we come back and it's like, you know what, we each make a difference. And the lady in the grocery store had no idea right. And it took me however many years to figure all this out, but you don't know that the impact that you have. So why not? What's it going to hurt? Why not give more compliments?
Well, and even what you said there, like the modeling factor, like when you're amongst friends, when you're, it just really hit me when you said that too, because my daughter she's like, oh, slay girl, queen. Like she says it all the time to me. And like, I'm always like, oh, that's so sweet. Like to see people who do that so naturally, right? Like, because she's not overthinking it. She's just saying it to people because she really truly feels like, hey, look at you, you're doing it. You're, like, how great would it be if we all said that every time we saw people, right, that are doing something, and to model that where everyone around you is seeing it? Of course, that's going to like cause the domino effect of like, oh, she paid a compliment. Like, I'm feeling good. I want her to know that this inspires me with her, right? Like this is all, it's also great to think about that modeling and putting that in place. So, with the listeners listening, I hope you guys can also learn from this to take that compliment, but then to pay it out, knowing that other people need to hear it too. Like, cause you never know, going back to that moment with you, how many times are we all in a spot where things aren't going great, but again, in our society, right? How are you doing? Fine. You're supposed to say fine. You're supposed to say good. You're not supposed to say like, I'm having a really shitty day and it's not really going well for me, right? Like we're not supposed to say that. So again, people say, yeah, my day's good. But when you do that, you could change the whole trajectory of their day. So interesting to think about that.
Yeah. And I think, again, the awareness, right? That when we stop and we think about that, we do have more of an impact. And I know in my life, there have been times where you feel defeated, you feel like, what difference does it make? I can't change anything. It's like, no, that's a victim mindset. That's not true, because I can, and I will, and I'm going to find my confidence. I'm going to keep my confidence. And this is what I need to do to make that happen.
That is so true, because we default to a victim mentality. I think a lot, just I coach too, and hearing people and the way that they think things happen to them. But at any point you can flip the script, right? Like just like that, you're probably getting like, I really hope the listeners all hear this and realize like, listen, because I bet people are paying you compliments all the time. You're just not listening, or you're deflecting them and not taking them in. Right. And so I think when you start taking them in and letting them really sink into you, you're going to see that they're everywhere. You're getting complimented all the time, probably, and you just don't see it because that's that victim mentality, right? We see the negative. Like that's like my favorite quote in Pretty Woman, the negative things are easier to believe, right? That's it's easier to believe, but it's just because we're not paying attention to the positive things, right?
Yeah. I love that you said that. And this is so awesome because it's a conversation, and none of this was scripted. And so it's what you just said, that I had those thoughts, and it led me to, throw compliments around like confetti, like, right? You see the confetti and like, yeah. And you just described it really well.
Oh, that's awesome. And so that's kind of how you started switching, like I know you said a lot of things that help you move through hard times in your life was your mindset and your priorities. So can you give some examples of or an example of how you overcame one of these hardships with the change in your mindset and priorities?
Yeah. So yes, I can. There's so many to choose from, but I'm going to say the stories that we tell in our head of shutting those off. And for a good period of my life, I worked in male-dominated industries and the only female at the table. And so that and men will never understand. I so appreciate that so many of them try. But sitting at a table and surrounded by people that think differently than what we do. And also whenever there's age differences. And so I would naturally tell the story in my head of, who are you to share this? And you're going to share this and they're not even going to pay attention. So why do you share anything? Right. And so I would find myself really like sitting on my hands and not saying anything. And then I felt bad because I'm like, I'm not contributing, not adding the value that I could. Like I have a different perspective. I have different thoughts that are going to make, this leadership group even stronger. Come on, get off your butt, Shannon. And you're like, and so I was looking in the mirror to be like, okay, stop playing victim, stop telling yourself those things and switch it. And again, sounds easy, but it wasn't, but continuously doing that and saying, this is my focus. From the time I wake up in the morning, I always focus on what I'm grateful for. Like, oh, I can stand up. I got out of bed. Oh, I have my eyes to be able to see. I can see this. I can see the pretty fall color changes, whatever that is. And then work into, okay, it's going to be positive talk. Whenever that negativity starts, I'm going to replace it. And it's like, no, you speak up. And it consistently doing that, I found my confidence and I found, and I'm like, you know what? I'm unique. God made me as one person that is different than everybody else, equally as everybody else is important and adds something different. I do too. And I'm not going to discount myself anymore. And I'm going to put it out there. And if it works, that's awesome. And if it didn't, then at least I feel good about it.
Well, and isn't that the truth, right? Because so many times when you say something, even if it doesn't end up being the end result, somebody else goes, wait, but if we did that and that, I mean, that's right. That's how we build. That's how we do good things, is like piling on and brainstorming together. So like, sometimes it's like, even if your idea might not be the major thing, it might get somebody else on it. Cause I've seen that before where you like say something and you're like, okay, yeah, okay, maybe that's not the greatest thing because of this, but then somebody says something and you're like, that's it, like it all goes into play. And I think having that confidence in yourself that you are just trying to bring the best, right? Your best thoughts and your best game to the table so that other people can feed off of that, and you can together work as a team to make that happen. So that's such a great point, to have that confidence in yourself instead of worrying about whether what you say is going to be amazing or not, just knowing that you're doing it for the end result of good, right? Like, you're all working towards whatever the, solution, the problem is, you're all working for a solution together, right? So that is such a great point. I love that. You have so many great tips. I'm so glad you came to share. And, as we get towards the end of the podcast, I always ask if there was one piece of advice you could give our listeners, what would it be?
And that's so hard. Adrienne,
I know there's tons, right?
Yeah. So, I'm good. I'm going to have to stick to consistently of us talking about accepting compliments. So I would say, get on board with this movement. Every person can make a difference. Pay attention to how you're responding when you get compliments, and start playing with it. Have a little bit of fun, see what difference it makes. And I think that you'll find that it's making a difference and that you'll want to do it even more.
Shannon will be in the Facebook group with us this week. So you guys, what I am asking for you to do is share the compliments you're receiving. I want you to be aware this week, right? Shannon and I are challenging you to be aware of what people are saying. And we want you to share those compliments with us. We want you to come on here, and whether you did what Shannon said and deflected, or you took a minute and just said thank you, or you really accepted it and were like, you're awesome. Thanks for saying that. However you took it, it doesn't matter. We just want you to be aware, and we would love for you to come share with us. So I'll have that challenge out this week on the Facebook group, and Shannon will be tagged in it. And we can't wait to hear how it's all going with you accepting compliments. So Shannon, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Adrienne. And this week, I'm going to be a lot better about getting on Facebook, because I want to hear from all of your listeners and be involved in the conversation. So I love the challenge. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And you guys, I'll see you in our Facebook. And until next week, when Adrienne talks, realize the power is within you. Hey, wait a second. Before you go anywhere, I wanted to let you know that I have an awesome class for only $57 that is helping people realize they can have the life they've always wanted. I'm loving the results, and I would love for you to join the class. Go to yoadriennetalks.com and click on coaching. You can register for the class there. And when you do it before the end of November, as a Thanksgiving treat from me, you will get a free 30-minute coaching session. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.